everybody. My name is Jinsoo Kim. I'm a professor at Chung University, and also I'm the president of Korea Association of Entrepreneurship Education Centers. Okay, as you know, the entrepreneurship is a hot topic and very important issues across all of the world. So many developed countries are now including entrepreneurship education in their national agenda to promote entrepreneurship and accelerate the economic growth. As you know, South Korea is suffering from low economic growth and high employment rate. So the Korean government is trying to promote creative economy and entrepreneurship to revitalize the economy and create new jobs. Currently, the Korean government, especially the Ministry of Education, is trying to expand the entrepreneurial education programs across the universities and to advance the business incubation systems. In order to make this expansion more meaningful, we need to observe the other developed countries' entrepreneurship education system and learn their valuable experience and expertise. I hope all of you to share the knowledge and learn each other and finally set a foundation for our global entrepreneurship education system. Okay, so we invited two speakers from Canada and also Singapore. Okay, so first speech will focus on the importance of embedding pro-entrepreneurship policies deep within the university, our management and technology. Yeah. And second speech will focus on the evolution of entrepreneurship education systems for 14 years at Nanyang Technological University. Okay. Now I will introduce our guest for today's session. First speaker is Professor Feridun Hamdullahpur. Okay, he's the president and vice chancellor at University of Waterloo in Canada. He got a PhD in chemical engineering from Technical University of Nova Scotia in Canada. Okay, would you welcome? Yeah, please give him the welcoming applause.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Let me again reiterate my thanks and appreciation to the organizers of this event. It's a wonderful event. I think the conversation we're having, discussions we're having, they're very timely. They are very appropriate to be discussed at this very critical point in time. So what we're discussing here is not about today. What we're discussing here is about tomorrow. And why is that? Those of you, some of you maybe at my talk yesterday will remember that many things that exist today will not exist 5-10 years from now because of this very fast changing world. Many things that we rely on today, we will not be relying on them because there will be something else, our needs will change, or many of these things will change. So when we talk about startup, that we use very often equivalent to, synonymous to entrepreneurship, is not something nice to have, is not something that, in addition to all kinds of things, startups will be really nice. Okay, they will add flavor. Startups will be the economic driver of the future. So it is not something that we will wait to happen by accident. It's something that we need to cultivate right from today. And that's why this topic is so important. Many startups, many, not all of them, but many startups will be done by young people like some of them we see in this room. And many of them will come through a solid research-based university education. So we use two words in the title of this session, creative talent, both of which are absolutely essential for any successful startups. So the topic is about how do we do this in Korea, but the best example, of course, I can give is from my own institution, and I'm going to try to summarize some of the things that we do at the University of Waterloo in order to create an environment, and I underline this, create an environment within which our students can flourish and our students are encouraged to follow a startup pathway. It doesn't have to be that pathway, but it is offered as a very viable alternative to guaranteed paid employment, to further advanced studies, or a very courageous thing by taking enormous risk and going through the startup pathway. So at the University of Waterloo, that is the environment. Waterloo is a much smaller geographic area compared to large cities like Boston or, New York or Toronto. But nevertheless, because of this, if you could look at the two charts, the university first and then the region within which the university is, they are both placed as very high innovative areas and fertile for startups. And they rank quite high globally. So because of that, let me just give you a very quick introduction of the university. The university is relatively young, established in 1957, with a very different mindset. This mindset is, let's redefine how our students learn. Let's redefine how education is offered. So majority of the university is based on a cooperative education model, that the students study for one term and then go out, find a paid employment in the field of their study and work for another term, then go back to the university, and they do it 5 times, minimum of 5 times. And can you imagine the interaction between the excellent education they're receiving at the university and complementing with excellent, again, factual, practical life elements and combining the two. So what they're learning is a lot more meaningful when they see what's happening with the knowledge they're gaining at the university. So if you do this 5 times, in addition to that, you're gaining fabulous real-life experience as going through 5 interviews, going through finding 5 jobs, going through being a professional for 5 times. So because of that, the university, the seats at the University of Waterloo, they're very aggressively sought after by students. Our entry standards are very high, and we make sure that excellence of our academic programs are very high. So the reason why I'm telling you this, the kind of startups, the kind of entrepreneurships we're talking about, they are not just, I woke up this morning and I have an idea. They are fine too. It is based on the knowledge I'm gaining at the university and complementing with a really much broader view of the world I have, I can link my knowledge to a possibility, an opportunity, or solving a problem that will be economically, socially, or technologically beneficial to my society. So those are the kind of students at a very high academic level coming in. At the Faculty of Engineering, the entry average starts at 93–94% based on high school graduation average. So 48% of these students, before they come to the university, they have an expectation. That expectation is that the university will provide them with that pathway. The university will encourage them for some sort of entrepreneurship opportunity. And if they have that bug in them, we're not going to say, don't be stupid. It's not the pathway for you. On the contrary, we will encourage them to take further risks, and if they fail, not to look back, get up and go forward and try something else. So because of that, 48% of what number? About 7,300 students, they believe that they could become entrepreneurs. And that is why I'm not saying, as I said before, entrepreneurship or startups, We are not expecting them to happen by accident. We are expecting them to happen in large numbers and to be very successful. So that's all fine, but how do we anchor all of these? And I repeat, entrepreneurship or this startup gene that you may have, okay? It's exactly what it is. It's a gene in you. You have this desire before even you come to the university, or something that you unearth while you're at the university. But it is not something that we think you take 5 courses and you'll become an entrepreneur. No, you have to start with that, and the university will provide you with all kinds of opportunities to do that. This is a busy one, but I can simplify it. Education is absolutely essential. Okay, there may be some exceptions to that, but if you look at it in large numbers, education is absolutely the most important ingredient. And then you connect your connection, as I mentioned, through your cooperative education or your connection with the world outside. When I say cooperative education, I also draw your attention to how massive that operation is. Every year we send out about 18,000 students to the world outside the university in 65 different countries, working for over 5,000 different employers. So this is the kind of connection that they will make, not only with themselves, but between the university and thousands of employers out there, so that we are very relevant to what's happening outside of the university. Then they have to be inspired. How do we do this? There are hundreds of volunteers, business leaders, mentors at the university helping these students to really take their creative juices, the ideas that they created, and move it inch by inch towards something that they could make with this idea, something that they could make and sell, something that somebody could make a great use of that. So that's the inspirational part. Discovery is very much based on research. Again, I'm going to touch on this maybe a little later, but it's very important to receive that education piece in an environment that everybody is curiosity-driven. The people who are teaching these students, they are very research-intensive. Therefore, students are exposed to the latest development in various areas of research. The students are in an environment that a question is always asked behind an answer. Why? And questioning everything. And understanding that in many cases, you have to be very open-minded that there could be more than one answer to a question. Sometimes there are answers that there are no questions for, okay? And this is the environment in which these students are exposed to. And when all of these things happen, we need to provide them with other vehicles so they can move forward. That's the incubation and acceleration. So you have an idea. We put some of them in a special dormitory that they are embedded in that dormitory with business leaders, mentors, and they are now, their ideas, their team is forming, and this team is moving towards a startup company. And then they are encouraged to bring that into a prototype, product type of thing that a startup fund is established to really help them. After they graduate, they have various alternatives. They can go to a graduate school, they can go and work for large companies, and they are always there and make a decent living. It's fine. They take risk. They are willing to, I don't know what's happening to this one, it's going backwards. They take risk, they're willing to live on craft dinner or, simple meals. They don't care about it. All their care is their aspiration to take their creativity into the marketplace. So this is the environment within which the students are exposed to right from day one until they graduate, and that's not finished there after their graduation. It also follows. So we call this environment velocity. Velocity is a nice term. It's moving fast before they are put in through acceleration. And on their own, they have raised 100 million funding their first 5 years. So this is a significant number. We separated one area, and that is the tremendous acceleration growth of the digital media economy. and we established a different campus just for digital media, and it's only 2 years old. Within 2 years, 14 new businesses were created by our students. And when I say new businesses, I'm not referring to myself and my best friend, we start a company. I'm talking about companies which will have at least 10 employers. So those are the kind of companies. Let me go back to, just briefly, to the cooperative education issue. And I will use 3 measures here. One is, how fast are these students employed? And the comparison is, the black bar is University of Waterloo graduates. The other one is the average of our entire province of Ontario that has a number of universities. Both for employment, both for employment in the fields related to their study, and also income. Those students are excel compared to the ones that are not in the cooperative program. And as I mentioned before, when we're talking about youth-based or startup education in Korea, I will say that you have to have this special DNA if you really want to bank on these students that will create those startups. You have to be creative. If you don't have your creativity in you, creativity cannot be forced in you. And the best way to be creative, you have to be broad-minded. You have to allow yourself to really broaden your horizons, either through traveling and other means. You have to allow yourself to be in tune with not just one discipline, whether it's engineering or computer science. Truly appreciate arts, truly appreciate literacy. And those are some elements that will really benefit you for being creative. And it's just a very simplified way of putting it. You have to take risks, and you have to ensure that you are able to work in a teamwork. And there are many other pieces, but the first and foremost important one is the creativity has to be there. The others will come. You can learn programming, you can learn all kinds of things, but you cannot learn creativity. You have to allow yourself to be creative. I can talk about this, as you can imagine, for a long time, but I will stop here, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again during the question period. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you for your introduction of the Waterloo University Entrepreneurship Education Systems. Okay, I will move to the next subject. The second speaker is Professor Joseph Wen from the Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. He got an MBA from the IMD Switzerland. And also he had various work experiences, like he involved privatization projects for government and statutory boards in the region. And also he involved in, served as a general manager of a licensed deposit-taking company and also senior consultant with the international consulting firm. Okay, yeah, welcome the Professor, Joseph Wen. Yeah, will you start? Yes, speech. Yeah.
Professor Kim, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Global Forum for giving me the chance to come here and share with you the experiences, and also to thank you for coming, for taking off your precious time. Now, let me start by just saying, just you visualize, if your parents and your children are graduating, or some of you are doing postgraduate work, you're going to graduate soon from one of the best universities and looking forward to a very good job. Now, during the period when there's recession, and even the best students have difficulty getting a good job, what happens? So, of course, when you can't get a job, there'll be a lot of pressure put onto you, parents as well, and to universities. So, if you remember during the 1990s, the late 90s, about 91, 92 onwards, we had one of the worst recession in Asia, and Singapore was also affected. Typically, our graduates from accountancy will have no difficulty getting a job. But even then, they had difficulty getting a job for even less than half the pay. So our president then, Professor Cham Tao-soon, had this vision, and he said, I can see what's time to come. And I want my students, especially those from engineering, to be able to come out and be on their own. That means to start their own work. And not to depend on looking for big firms to employ them with a big fixed salary. Early on, we were discussing among ourselves that we find that this seems to be the similar problem among Asian countries especially, that parents always have a very high expectation of you, that, you know, you're just going to get a very good job, get a very good pay, maybe get married and everything else, and start giving them grandchildren, and they're very happy. So during those circumstances, when you find that you need to really be on your own, what do you do? Now, when people think in terms of entrepreneurship, they think in terms of doing on a business. But yet, a lot of proportion of businesses started, they fail. Why did they fail? They fail not because they don't have a good product. Very often, these entrepreneurs have brilliant products, and yet they can fail. So there are many reasons for failing, right? One of the most common reasons is the lack of execution of the proper strategy to take the business forward. And that's why when you talk to most entrepreneurs, this is not in their syllabus. And our president said, okay, I want all my students to be exposed to entrepreneurship. It was tough because at the time, every professor will have their own subject. They are so caught up with the subject that they said, no, we are not going to give up any part of our course. President then come up with a so-called instruction, say, all right, very simple. I just want 5 hours of lecture to all students, engineering, businesses, everywhere else, to immerse them, to introduce them to the concept of entrepreneurship and doing business. So that's how we started. And as it goes along, when things begin to settle down and people begin to accept it and students find a little bit interest, then we started a center. And this is a center that I'm going to share with you today, which we call the Technopreneurship Center, all right? So there's a background of how this center comes about. But first, let me explain one more point. Our center is not involved in developing entrepreneurs. That means we do not come out and say how many entrepreneurs we produce. Entrepreneurs come from various disciplines in the university. We have another unit that brings the idea together, incubate the project, introduce angel fund to them, and actually get them started. But ours is purely on education, all right? So I'm going to bring my presentation to 2 main parts. The first part, I'm going to give a bit of background of Singapore and the development that prompted us to think in terms of this. And the second part is I talk a little bit about center and what sort of things we do. The word creativity, innovation that we hammer on is basically to bring students to the next level. Those who come to a program, we don't need to see them graduating out as entrepreneurs. But what is important is that they're able to apply the entrepreneur spirit in them. That even when they work for large companies, that will make the difference. And that is the so-called background that we were tasked with the job. Okay. Now, as you all remember, Singapore is a very small country. We got an independence based in 1965. And during the 1965 days, it was a very tough time for Singapore. We were basically a very poverty-stricken country. We don't have the natural resources. We don't almost have anything at all. And you can see that basically it's from that trading port, we need to transform it into a modern city. And how to transform this? That was the original first plan for our technology plan to bring ourselves to become a modernized city. We actually look after basically 4 countries as our leading example. The first is Japan, followed by Korea, and then Taiwan and Hong Kong. Because we feel that if we do not have this as our mentors and emulate ourselves, we will be still struggling. So we need to actually bring ourselves up to par. And that's basically what we do. So how do we transform ourselves? So that was really the long-term goal. Now, if you look at our economy, you can see basically the few stages that are being developed. Of course, when we first started, very poor country, we are very labor-intensive. We do a lot of manufacturing. Okay? That was up to the 70 period. Then we realized that chip manufacturing we cannot sustain because number one, we are too small a country. We don't have enough labor force. How are we going to compete with our neighboring countries like Malaysia and Indonesia? They have a large labor force and with very, very low cost. So we realized that. So we shift into the next stage was what we call skill intensive, to develop critical skills. That means we need to be skilled. And again, with the competition coming in, the cost factor is always a strong competitive factors. Then we begin to invest into basically higher base industry where it involves a lot more capital investment. And we went to become very capital intensive. Then we very quickly realized that we got to shift this towards the technology era where we got to leverage on technology. And ultimately to reach the goal of what we call knowledge management, innovation economy, and to lock onto the high-value technology. Now, you may be wondering, in fact, the chairman just asked me, why do you call yourself technopreneurship? This is a term that is basically a bit strange, because normally people refer to entrepreneurship. The reason why we call technopreneurship is our deputy president at the time coined up this word. And he said that, I want people to realize that as we go forward, it's no longer pure business we are doing, but you have to leverage on technology. You have to leverage on technology management to give it advantage. And that's why I use the word technology, techno, plus entrepreneurship, so become technopreneurship. So this is always to remind us that we have got to go in twin together with this. And because of that, we make sure that all our engineering students also have one course in business management, finance, and we also have our business students and accounting students doing one course in technology management. So this crossover begins to actually narrow the gap so that students themselves can find they can relate to it much more. And based from this phase that we can see is happening, we always go on very long-term planning. Probably Singapore is well known for its very so-called long-term planning. And you can notice that we actually plan on 5-year period. So starting from the very basic part, when we in the 1960s, we have this national technology plan to take in place. And every 5 years will progress. So now the most current will be the research, innovation, and enterprise. This is the plan that we are going to set aside 16.1 billion, and we should be hitting it by the end of next year. And after that, we will plan for further direction. Now, in this plan of research, innovation, and enterprise, it incorporates basically the creativity part, the critical thinking part, and the entrepreneur part. And we're saying that we don't need to look at the formal model of just merely producing entrepreneurship students, but also students that can excel in a very strong research-based foundation. We realize that we need to move to the higher-end technology part because otherwise we cannot compete. Cost is never in our favor. But if we go to the higher value-added part of technology, this is where we are going to go into the research-based track. We need to have very, very good and also passionate and motivated students to fill the role. And that's why the entrepreneur part comes in, is to drive them with passion, to basically remove the borders from them so that they can see what are opportunities that they can go for. Now, 20% of our GDP comes from manufacturing. And you know in the manufacturing industry, right, we will lose out to Japan, to Korea, to Taiwan. We don't have the cost competitiveness. And yet 20% is a big sum, and this is where we actually focus on. So we have to shift ourselves towards the very higher-end technology stuff, and now we're going to things like biological cell, molecular cell, and all this stuff. But yet the basic manufacturing are still there. And I remember when Lester Churro from MIT first visited us, he gave us this assurance. He told us, don't you worry about cost so much. It may be very expensive, but think of it this way. If you have the best honey, you attract the best bees. That means he told us you must have a hub, a center, where you want to attract the best person from all over the world to want to come here to work. And you work on that attraction, and that will give you the competitive advantage. If you go on purely on cost, where you just produce a product cheaper than your neighbor, and there's no value added, you will always be at that level of basic technology. So that in 1992 was the driving force to wake us up, to say that yes, we want to move up and we want to attract the best person around the world to come into Singapore. Now, if you look at Singapore, for those of you who know Singapore well, we have been a very, very clean country, very, very tough country with very strict laws. You all know about that, okay? But if you look at Singapore today, we recognize that to attract the best talents here, we have to open ourselves up. We have to embrace the culture and the practices of our visitors. And therefore, today you can find a very much more liberalized Singapore than before. So this is one of the aspects that we want to build in, and this is built into our entrepreneur mindset to show to people that you look for the opportunities, you do what you need to do, all right? We have to break away from the old model of what we think it should be. Now, the worst impact came was during the 2000 when the dot-com crash. Many of the entrepreneurs at that time were right along the dot-com, tail, and we all very much badly burnt. And once you are burnt, you get scared. So we were not able to attract venture capitalist fund, we were not attract anything else, and that actually put a big temper onto our entrepreneur drive. That was the 2000. So in 2006, we decided to establish this National Framework for Research, Innovation, and Enterprise, because these are the three pillars that we believe will steer us out of our misery, so to speak, will actually put us into the more competitive basis. And under this scale, we say that we are going to spend about $16 billion on research, innovation, enterprise, and we have with us 6 key strategies, right? Generation of new knowledge and ideas, development of scientific talent, emphasis on competitive funding. It means gone are the days whereby you just stretch out your hand and you can get the funds. Today we say that no, you have got to fight for the funds because there is a restriction to what is available because resources are never unlimited. We want to emphasize the strength of synergies. And that's why in our university we are very cognizant of the fact that the schools cannot operate independently. The business school cannot operate itself independently from the engineering school, from the biological science school. We have to integrate and see whatever synergies we can get from there. And we also focus on the economic outcomes of what we do, because at the end of the day, it's still the return on the investment that also has a strong bearing on many issues. And finally, we want to provide a strong support for our scientists, for our trust. And these are the 6 key strategies, and we allocate the funding accordingly. Now, here we therefore identify our priorities areas. We have to transform our economy into something that basically will be in line with the development in the world, that will at least put us in a competitive position. So as I mentioned earlier, that the basic manufacturing activities, we are going to lose out. We won't have the competency there and we don't have the advantage there. So we're going to move into these 5 new areas that we have discovered or we identify as the key. First is the electronic industry. So we do a lot of R&D and we provide a lot of infrastructure for computer companies, development of both hardware and software. HP, for example, has set up a center in Singapore just to look at their inkjet printer. At the point in time, HP was so-called faced with this problem. They wanted to actually promote the laser printer to become the industry leader. But because of the fierce competition from Epson, from Canon and all the others, they found that the inkjet printer was very much being threatened. And they thought that, I will then phase out my inkjet printer and I will spend my R&D onto my laser printer to become the leader of the world. So when they begin to want to harvest out and they try to so-called divest out from the inkjet printer, of course what they did is, first thing they did is they drop the price and try to sell off whatever they can and to ease out gradually. They found that the market reacted very strangely. In fact, now the market said that, hey, your printer is now very attractive because your price similar to the Epson. Doesn't matter that Epson is 720 DPI and HP is 600 DPI. At that time, nobody knows what is the difference. Is more DPI better or is less better? If you say it's more is better, then you ask your friends who play golf. Is your score higher better? All right? Of course, it's not right for golf. It should be the lower and not the higher. Now, when it comes to technical features like that, very often customers do not really fully appreciate. So when they look at the product, they say, okay, I'm paying about the same price, but this is Hewlett-Packard and this Epson. Well, I will buy Hewlett-Packard. That's it. And when they found that the whole market supported the Hewlett-Packard printer, then HP realizes that, hey, hang on a minute. If the market is going to twin the support for me and if I still would exceed, it doesn't make sense. And that was when they decided to designate the center in Singapore to do the R&D work in the inkjet and to see where should they go. And of course, today you know that HP is very much strongly into the inkjet printer, and they're actually phasing out the laser printer because of the big price differential. So from electronics, then we move to biomedical sciences. We realized that this is also another big growth area of the future. So we set up a collaboration with Stanford University to look into this biomedical. And then we decided to go into infocom and media, engineering, and finally the clean tech environment. We have one of the best entrepreneur firm called HyFlux in the water purification using the membrane technology. So these are all basically the result of the entrepreneurship. Now, don't worry about this, okay? This is what we are always very good at, trying to put everything together to integrate. But basically, I want you to just look at the last bottom point. The last bottom point in the terms of culture is where we actually now set up funds, a substantial amount of funds for university to do the basic research and to encourage entrepreneur development. In the past, it was never there. In the past, there's always some other sort of research. But today, we earmark specific funds. So that means entrepreneurship has its standing with funds allocated for them to develop as well as channel into universities to administer. Okay, so to meet the challenge of globalization, then that time there was a Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, said that we need to produce both innovative and entrepreneur generation. Entrepreneur in terms of being creative, not necessarily in starting or development businesses, but creative in looking at the problem that faces and it coming up with a solution. All right, now, this is basically what we do in our center. I just give you some snapshot. You can see that this is very fun, all right? Because that's basically what we want entrepreneurship to be like, you know. A lot come from the students themselves, the activities they come up with, the ideas generation, the business plan that they provide is really a very dynamic and vibrant environment. Now, under the old model, you look on the left, is purely entrepreneurship. We started this in '89. We get a grant from the accounting firm called Pitt Marwick, who set up this Entrepreneurship Development Center. At that time, our job was only to help small and medium enterprises. We come up with a very good diagnostic tool. That means it's like you're going to a doctor, you go for a blood test. We have this test for all companies. You run through the financial accounts through it, and we can basically tell you whether you have high cholesterol, whether you have hypertension or not, and what are the things to look for, and what are the signs that you should pay attention to, and how to bring yourself back to financial health. So it's very much based on diagnostic and very much based on financial health. But the engineers look at this and say, hey, you know, it doesn't ring a bell because we are talking about a fantastic product that can do so many things. I'm coming with a robot, you know, that can do all the household things and reduce the workload, you know, so it doesn't jive. But then they don't realize that when you come with a good product, you still got to get the product to the market, to the consumer. You still got to think about the basic marketing. You still got to think about your logistic management. You still got to think about the value chain. So then comes 2001, we were told that, all right, it's time to move on, and we want this technology center to be set up so that you can integrate the function and you leverage on technology. You must embrace technology. You must harness the technology development, and you must look at the ecosystem, and most importantly is redesign the business models to suit what we do in the 21st century. So we left the old model of entrepreneurship to this new technopreneurship. Okay, so we define our mission and we align this to university. So the center mission is to inspire and develop entrepreneurs with will and capability to make a positive and meaningful difference to society. That's just our very simple mission. We're not supposed to produce entrepreneurs, but we want to develop this mindset into them. And you align with the university mission is nurturing creative and entrepreneurial leaders through a broad education in diverse disciplines. All right, so we so-called dovetail into the university missions. Now, we had a program, then we had an undergraduate program where we have a minor. We get the student interested to do a 4 subject, and then they can get a minor in entrepreneurship. Now, when we first started this program, the president was saying, our graduates finish examination in May, convocation is sometime in September, and they have a long period of wait before they can actually start the work. And the president thought that this period of waiting is quite wasteful. So we first started with a postgraduate diploma for our graduates who just finished the examination while waiting for result, come into this postgraduate diploma and do entrepreneurship so that when the time the results are out and they convocate, they can fit nicely into a new job. And what the president of Waterloo said just now, that you are really ready to step into the company and start working, and you're no longer fresh because you've gone through this period. So we started this 9-year postgraduate diploma program. And gradually, because of the demand pool, ultimately, this postgraduate diploma became a master's program. And we call this a Master's in Science in Technopreneurship. And what's the difference between our Master's in Science in Technopreneurship and a normal MBA? The difference is basically the normal MBA will take you through the whole spectrum of subjects, prepare you for CEO role. Our Technopreneurship program is a program where we basically integrate all the functions together and go through the path of your venture creation to give you that advantage. Now, so our approach in Feridun is very simple. Our content is we do in-class teaching, but that's very minimal. But the contextual part is important. We take the students out of the classroom, go to the industry, go to visit, and have internship, exchange program elsewhere. And the infrastructure that we use will be using enablers, like getting VCs involved, getting industrial leaders to come and speak, and also tie with a lot of strategic alliances with a lot of partners. So existing program is undergraduate minor, so we introduce them to entrepreneurship. This is what we do, all right? Basically, you look at the minor in entrepreneurship. A lot of these things come from the students themselves. A lot of learning comes from their business ideas, business case competition, and basically a lot of exchange program as well, where they basically almost like we remove the barrier and let them find their own bearing. Now for the master's program, we call it a global entrepreneur. And what do we look at? We look at basically this so-called venture creation cycle. We started by looking at the introduction part where we take all the basic subjects like basic accounting, marketing. But we don't teach them according to the normal, typical accounting, marketing as a topical form. But we teach them in the form of the venture creation, in the form of the entrepreneurship module. And then we take them through all the way until the last part in the mature stage where you come to the sustainable leadership, and that's when the venture capitalists will come in to assess the product. Now, from here, we do not only are the only gateway to produce entrepreneurs, because by this alone is very narrow. The university has a separate center to trap entrepreneurs from all over universities. We are only the education part to get the students the idea, but our job is not really to produce. The production comes from the other unit. So hopefully from here we can move into that basis, okay? And okay, these are some of the exchange programs we went to. We went to Seattle, we went to visit Google, we went to China, we went to visit Lenovo, and universities as well. And it's quite fun. And just last April, we have this Silicon Valley Technopreneurship Forum where we get our students there to listen to all the Silicon Valley people to talk. And from there, they actually pick up some of the ideas and brought it back to Singapore and actually continue to develop it and nurture it, and actually eventually a few of them become successful, launching subsequently. All right? Okay, we collaborate with other institutions, those who are involved. We also collaborate with professional bodies because we know that this is very important. And finally, we do a lot more work with the government agencies because these are the people who have the fund to help us. And so we work very closely with them. And also we have basically exchange program. Chongnam University came and spent one summer program with us. Hyukjin University also sent the EMBA team over to visit us, and we hosted them for a while. So, this exchange is also very, very useful, all right? And basically, we look at it from this angle that we emphasize on Asia, that's our strength. Then we bring it to global, we tie in, and then we look at the side that we are talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about the skills, the talents, knowledge, know-how, and most important is the mindset, and that channel back to the entrepreneur behavior. Okay? And that's basically, I think, what I need to say. So let me close by saying this, right? I want to quote Charles Darwin, right? Charles Darwin is often misquoted. He said, it is not the strongest of the species that will survive, nor the most intelligent, but it is the most responsive to change. And the entrepreneurship really signifies the change in the mindset in order to respond to the environment that we are facing. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much for keeping the right time. Okay, you enjoyed the speech? No? Okay, I think we have two subjects. We covered the two subjects. First one is President Hamdullahpur provided a very big picture and then framework of university entrepreneurship education systems. And also next speaker is Professor Wen. He provides very details of entrepreneurship education programs. So I think two subjects is very well balanced. Okay, thank you very much for your speech. And then we invited two discussants from Korea. First discussant is Professor Ilho Kim from Sungkyunkwan University, and he is also director of Entrepreneurship Education Center, and also he was president of Waterloo, Korea, also president of Autodesk Korea. Okay, let me introduce one more discussant, and then we'll start discussion. Yeah, and last discussant is Professor Hyukjin from Korea Polytechnic University. He was director of Entrepreneurship Education Center. Okay. Would you, Professor Ilho Kim, would you start your discussion? Okay. Yeah.
네, 감사합니다, 김진수 교수님. 예, 저는 기업체 한 30여 년 근무하다가 2012년도에 이제 성균관대학교의 창업 교육센터장으로서 부임을 했습니다. 현재 맡고 있는 업무도 이제 우리 대학의 창업 동아리 지원이라든지 또 방금 두 분의 연사가 말씀해주신 창업가 정신. 저는 앙트프리니어십을 기업가 정신으로 많이들 이제 해석을 하시지만 오히려 우리 학생들한테는 창업가 정신이라고 번역하는 것이 더 맞지 않나 이렇게 생각을 합니다만은 그런 교육들을 하고 있는데 앞에서 이제 두 분 발표하신 걸 여러분들도 다 들으셨겠지만 상당히 이제 잘 체계화 시스템화돼 있고 이제 저도 그렇게 느꼈습니다. 그리고 또 들어오기 전에 잠깐 이제 환담을 나눌 때도 이제 그런 말씀들을 주셨고 그런데 우리나라도 이제 해외 그런 벤치마킹을 많이 하죠. 요즘에는 이제 실리콘밸리 창업, 이스라엘 창업 해가지고 이제 최근에 또 각광받는 게 방금 우리 총장님께서 말씀하신 워틀루 대학을 벤치마킹해야 된다 그래가지고 국내 유수의 대학들이 많이 벤치마킹을 하고 있습니다. 이제 그런 측면에서 우리나라도 정부 차원에서도 많이 이제 청년 창업을 북돋우기 위해 하고 있지만은 조금 이제 제가 다르게 생각하고 있는 부분은 우리는 너무나 정량 목표에다 치중을 하고 있는 것 같아요. 두 분의 발표를 보면 상당히 환경을 잘 만들어 주면 당연히 열심히 잘 해서 좋은 성과를 낼 것이다 하는 어떤 필라조피를 깔고서는 교육을 하는 반면에 우리나라는 상당히 어떤 정해진 기간 안에 몇 개의 학생 창업 기업이 창업을 했느냐, 학교에 창업 동아리가 몇 개 있느냐, 창업 커리큘럼 교육 과목이 몇 과목을 하고 있느냐 이거를 계속 리포팅을 해달라고 요구를 받고 있어요. 저도 사실 기업체에 있으면서 신입사원들도 많이 보고했지만은 제가 대학에 와서 느꼈던 거는 대학에서 뭔가 그런 창업가 정신이나 당장 창업을 하라고 저는 얘기하지 않습니다. 지난 봄에 제가 전국 6개 도시를 돌면서 청년 창업 토크 콘서트라는 걸 한번 진행을 해보면서 1,600명의 설문 조사를 했는데 대부분이 5년 또는 10년 후에 졸업 5년, 10년 후에 창업을 해보고 싶다 하는 게 가장 많은 그 비중을 차지했습니다. 그런 우리 학생들한테 취업이 안 되니까 창업. 그래서 저는 그 취업이 안 되니까 창업이 아니라 너한테 취업의 기회도 있고 창업의 기회도 있는데 네 스스로 판단해서 창업을 선택할 것인지 취업을 선택할 것인지 그렇게 그 가르쳐야 되지 않는가 이제 좀 그런 생각을 합니다. 그런 그 느낌을 받았고요. 우리 그 함둘라푸르 총장님께 하나 제가 그 여쭤보고 싶은 거는 사실 우리나라 이런 그 교육 체계는 어떻게 보면 상당히 이제 정부 주도형의 탑다운 방식을 많이 이제 따르고 있는 반면에 지금 이제 두 분의 그 연사님들의 그런 걸 보면 이제 어떤 펀더멘탈, 인바이러먼트를 만들어주고 또 거기에 따른 그 적절한 정부의 지원을 이끌어내는 이제 바텀업 그런 그 방식을 따르고 있는 것 같습니다. 그런 측면에서 우리나라와 같이 너무 그런 그 탑다운 방식의 정부 주도형의 그런 이제 창업 교육을 어떻게 하면 바텀업 방식으로 이렇게 스무스하게 트랜지션할 수 있는지 이제 그런 그 질문을 하나 드리고 싶고요. 또 우리 조셉 완 교수님한테는 싱가포르는 어떻게 보면 뭐 저도 이제 비즈니스하면서 출장을 많이 가고 했습니다만은 이제 한국에 비해서는 상당히 이제 작은 도시국가 그런 형태이기 때문에 상당히 잘 그 통제가 잘 되고 있고 잘 오가나이즈돼 있고 또 제 뭐 몇몇 친구들도 너무 그렇게 오가나이즈돼 있다 보니 국민 정서가 너무 정해진 길로만 가려고 하기 때문에 뭔가 어떤 창의적인 그런 걸 하기 위해서 껌 못 씹게 하다가는 껌도 씹게 하고 하는 이제 정책을 최근에 와서 많이 바꾼 것으로 알고 있습니다만은 이제 그런 측면에서 해외 그런 교류들을 상당히 잘 하고 있고 또 그렇게 하시는데 우리 대학도 뭐 해외하고 많이 연관을 가지고 있지만은 그런 해외 교류를 하는 데 있어 가지고 그 학생들이 기본적으로 어떤 덕목들을 좀 갖추고 해외 학생들하고 교류를 하는 것이 좋은지 그런 데 조언을 해주실 수 있으면 좀 말씀을 좀 부탁을 드리겠습니다.
Okay, thank you very much for your discussion. And President Hamdullahpur, you understand the question?
Still going.
Oh, still going. Okay, sorry. Okay. 지금 통역이 되고 있기 때문에, yeah, translation. Okay.
Interpretation is still going.
Still going. Okay. Okay.
I think you have to find the happy medium. I think part of the answer is just in this room. Okay, it's as I repeat all the time. Some of the challenges, some of these issues, some of these opportunities we have in front of us. I don't think that we are not the generation that will fully realize that potential. The generation that is here in this room, it's the young ones. So how do we enable them? So top-down maybe is not the right attitude, but governments will have to have the right policies, okay, and practices in place so that the bottom-up could really find a place to go upwards, okay? So the only best way to do this is not to say you're going to do A, B, and C, which is completely opposite to the creativity notion we brought up, but provide the environment, okay? The best thing is to provide the environment with right policies and attitudes so that the bottom-up can go upward. We repeat this over and over, that we have the best and the brightest minds here at our universities. They're receiving absolutely the top-class, highest quality education. They're exposed to everything, including the world-class research. What's missing here? The only thing that's missing is that little catalyst, which is the environment within which they can really function. So bottom-up is absolutely necessary, but some guidance at the top level is also important.
Okay, yeah. Okay, after migration, he has covered a smooth migration from top down to bottom up. But you mentioned that we need two approach, like a top down, also bottom up, right? But Korean government right now is just trying to push up. I mean, for short-term, outcomes. Okay, so they are their approach is a very top-down approach. They don't wait. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, his question is how the transit. I mean, the transport or just a smooth transition from the top down to bottom? Oh, no, from the top down to bottom. Yeah, smooth transition.
So again, I don't have all the details of what's happening in Korea, but what I see is very, very exciting and very encouraging. Again, this forum, it speaks for itself in terms of how it is this kind of culture is promoted. In my case, it's very different because I'm not a public institution nor a private one, but somewhere in between. Therefore, I, as a university, we as a university, we need to also justify our own existence. When I say the picture out there is different, some of the big things that enterprises we have today may not exist tomorrow. Some universities could be part of that as well. If you're not innovative, if you're not creating that kind of environment, we're not appealing to our students. Okay, so we need to innovate from within. We don't need to wait for the governments to do that. So it is an iterative process, and I think the universities, in this case, have a very, very important role to play in order to participate in this education exercise that the governments are also desperate to learn, so that they could implement proper policies in place.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then could you understand? I mean, Professor Wen, you didn't hear the interpretation, right?
No, we are having the same interpretation.
Same interpretation problem. Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a bit onto that, I think among Asian countries, right, this top-down approach is fairly common, right? And I think Singapore is no exception. Okay. The only difference is that my generations. That means we went through the post-war days, the tough days, when you see the first picture. We are quite happy to be told what to do, all right, in that sense. Because we were at the basic lower level of Maslow hierarchy. We are talking about food, shelter, job. But today when I look at my children, my two sons, you can't do top-down anymore, right? They will not accept it because the new generation will find that, hey, they want to be heard, they want to be relevant, and what is important to them, their so-called sense of value and their preferences may change. So in this case, what the Singapore government tried to do is, we do try to involve them into participation, right? That means get the feedback. We form special parliamentary committee on each issue, and we invite them to feedback. We have specially nominated members of parliament, people who are not elected, but people brought from university, from industry, right? Whose job is to supposedly question the governments on policy. They only cannot vote because they're not elected MP, but they're supposed to take the role to represent, the people, the voice of the people. Because most MP may not be seen to be so directly wanting to question the ministers, but the NMP can do that. So in this way, we are trying to filter down, the top down, because the concern of the government is not so much of I want to control. It's just that I want to do what is best for you. Now, if you tell me this is not the best, I'm willing to listen to you. And after listening to you, I think that what you say is true, then we will do it that way. So that, in a way, tempered back on that top-down approach. But again, when we talk about entrepreneurship in a university, we basically don't use top-down. We just basically tell the student, you just figure out what you like to do. You have a good idea, come to us. We'll give you whatever support we can. We don't really tell what to do. So times have changed. Like students don't come and ask me, say, oh, Professor Wan, can you tell me what is the research area I would like to do a project under you and you supervise me? I tell them, no. You tell me what project you want to do. If I'm competent enough to supervise you, I will supervise you. If I don't think I can add value to you, I get someone else to add value. But you have to come up with a project yourself that you are interested in, because when you run into the first problem, you will know how to solve it. If it is my project and you do for me, when you run into a problem, you'll come back to me and ask me, so what do I do now, right? So, that mindset has to change. And once the mindset change, then things will follow in place.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move to the next discussant, and Professor Hyukjin. Okay, would you start?
네. 안녕하십니까. 저 한국산업기술대학교의 고육진 교수라고 합니다. 제가 그 창업교육센터장을 맡고 있고 창업 지원 단장을 맡고 있으면서 오로지 이제 제 관심은 저희 학교 학생들의 기업가 정신을 좀 어떻게 함양할까 최근에 지금 관심이 많이 맞춰져 있습니다. 그런데 아까 맨 처음에 이제 워털루 대학의 함둘라푸르 총장님 발표에 보면 48%라는 숫자를 보고 정말 깜짝 놀랐습니다. 아이러니하게도 제가 올 초에 저희 학교 학생들을 대상으로 너네들 졸업 후에 한번 창업을 해볼래라고 했더니 딱 4.8%가 그런 의향이 아까 그 점이 혹시 잘못 찍힌 게 아닌가라고 이렇게 정도로 이렇게 좀 놀랐었는데 참 정말 부럽고 어떻게 48%의 학생이 졸업 후에 창업을 도전을 할까라는 거에 대해서 좀 우아했는데 이렇게 정말 그 워털루 대학의 그 환경을 그거 진짜 보니까 정말 그럴 수도 있겠다라고 정말 이해가 됐고요. 저희 학생들이나 뭐 해서 도대체 왜 그러면 이렇게 취업만 하냐라고 했더니 왜 창업에 도전을 안 하냐라고 했더니 뭐 대부분의 학생들은 좀 두렵다. 졸업하고 창업하는 시점에서 그때 창업하다 잘못되면은 취업에 대한 기회 비용이 사실 크거든요. 그래서 그런 부분에 있어서 좀 두렵다라는 부분이 이제 되게 큰 것 같습니다. 그래서 그 이제 질문은 아마 그 워털루 대학도 이게 어느 순간에 된 거는 아닌 것 같고요. 그런 관점에서 정말 총장님이 봤을 때 그래도 이제 많은 이제 수십 년 동안 다양한 프로그램들을 통해서 학생들의 기업가 정신을 키워 오셨을 텐데. 저 이제 막 시작하는 한국의 대학의 입장에서 이것만큼은 꼭 정말 필요하다, 효과적이다라는 거 한두 개 정도의 프로그램을 좀 소개해 주셨으면 좋겠고요. 워털루 대학처럼 너무 우수한 학생들, 너무 우수한 환경 말고 그냥 한국에 있는 일반적인 대학에서도 적용할 수 있는 그런 것들 한두 개만 얘기해 주셨으면 좋겠고요. 좀 궁금한 거 하나 더 말씀드리면 기업들이 그러니까 최근 들어서 저희 나라도 너무 고마운 게 포스코라든가 SK에서 드디어 신입사원 채용을 할 때 창업 경력자를 우대한다는 공고가 났습니다. 가장 저희들이 꿈꿔왔던 부분인데요. 그 캐나다 같은 경우는 제가 북유럽 가서는 확실히 느꼈습니다. 오히려 창업에 실패했더라도 기업들이 그거를 자산으로 인정을 해줘갖고 취업을 오히려 더 스카우트하려고 난리더라고요. 그러면 학생들이 자연스럽게 창업에 도전할 것 같은데 만약에 캐나다 같은 경우는 그런 기업들의 인식이 어떻게 돼 있는지 그거 두 가지 질문 드리고요. 그다음에 이제 조세프한 교수님 테크노프로너십 너무 감동적인 단어를 들은 것 같습니다. 저희 학교도 사실 이공대 중심으로 운영이 되다 보니까 저희도 이공계인들한테 어떻게 하면 좀 기업가 정신을 키울 수 있을까라는 이제 고민을 많이 하고 있었고요. 사실 저희 나라가 조금 이제 걱정스러운 부분은 사실 저희 나라는 제조업이 상당히 강한 나라임에도 불구하고 사실 일자리 창출 효과가 큰 기술 기반의 기회형 창업 비중이 OECD 국가에서 가장 낮은 수준에 머물러 있습니다. 실제로 뭐 최근 들어 보면은 대부분의 제조업에서 근무하셔서 20년, 30년 근무하셔서 정말 그 분야의 노하우와 경험과 기술을 갖고 계신 분이 실제 퇴직 후에 전혀 무관한 뭐 생계형 창업이라는 용어는 좋지는 않은데 뭐 치킨집이나 이런 것들 하는 것도 나쁜 건 아닙니다. 이제 단순히 그런 게 나쁜 게 아니라 경력과 무관한 준비되지 않은 그런 창업이 나쁜 거긴 한데 대부분의 분들이 그런 데로 빠지게 되는데 최근에 이제 서베이 조사를 보니까 왜 본인의 그 기술을 기반으로 한 창업을 하지 않고 작게라도 1인 창업이라도 하지 않고 왜 그런 창업을 하냐라고 했더니 한 번도 생각해 본 적이 없대요. 대학에서도 학교에서도 사회에서도 이 이유에 대해서 무엇을 해야 될지 창업을 어떻게 해야 될지에 대해서 한 번도 가르쳐주지 않았다라고 합니다. 그래서 그런 부분에서 참 좀 저희 나라가 좀 그런 부분들을 그래서 이제 대학에서 이렇게 이공계생들을 대상으로 해서 테크노프로너십 기술인들의 창업가 정신을 기업가 정신을 키우는 거에 대해서 정말 너무 잘 들었고요. 정말 부러웠고요. 그래서 이제 구체적으로 이제 저희 대학에서도 또 이제 많은 대학에서 사실 이런 현재 지금 고민에 있습니다. 그래서 그렇게 이공계 대학생들을 대상으로 창업가 정신 교육, 기업가 정신 교육을 하자. 그런데 이런 것들이 지금 고민이에요. 그러니까 구체적으로 하면은 몇 과목 정도가 혹시 난양 대학에는 개설이 돼 있는지, 그리고 몇 과목 정도가 필수 교과로, 그러니까 난양대학교 학생들은 교역과 정신과 관련된 개설된 과목에 혹시 뭐 몇 과목 정도를 필수로 들어야 되는지 그런 것들이 돼 있는, 어느 정도 돼 있는지 여부와, 그다음에 학생들은 난양공대 학생들은 졸업할 때까지 평균으로 한 기업과 정신과 관련된 과목을 몇 과목 정도 수강하는지 그런 내용들을 알려주시면 교육과정 설계에 많은 도움이 될 것 같습니다. 감사합니다.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
This time it's perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
I think to properly answer this question, I should give you just a little bit of history about the University of Waterloo. Okay. It's a different type of university. We call it unconventional because it was created in 1957 by business leaders, not by governments, not by academics. And at that time, people looked at it and said, what are you folks doing? But that was exactly the right way to start. There are 4 fundamental principles behind this environment, one of which is, they said, we want to offer, you must do everything at the highest quality academic level. So we're not creating a polytechnic. This is not a vocational school. This is a full-fledged university with the highest standards of academic programs. Number 2, research, curiosity-based, fundamental, basic research has to be at the cornerstone of the university. So those 2 were essential. And then the delivery system of education, as I mentioned, right from day one, cooperative education system. And I will come back to this briefly again. And the 4th one is very important. That is one of the reasons behind that 48%, that you create intellectual property. It is 100% yours, whether you're a student or a faculty member. The university will not tax this. University will not take any portion of it. You created it, it is yours. The university do everything that we can do to make sure that that intellectual property will progress into something commercializable or something applicable. So based on those basic fundamental principles, then the university created that environment. That's the reason why there is such a big expectation from that. So how do you translate this into a Korean situation? Okay, for those well-established universities, I spent 2 days at Postech the other day. It was outstanding. It's just a great experience. So I think if we are looking at the students to understand this, we are looking in the wrong directions. The students are on fire. They're ready to go. They have a lot of things. What we need to do, have a really open line of communication with our businesses, with our industry, with everything that is outside the university, to get them to realize that the world is different. You may be one of the top steel manufacturers today. 10 years, 15 years from now, composites will come in and change the whole world, okay? So you need to innovate constantly in order for your business to be alive. How would you do this? How would you do this? It is your innovation, either through your own company, startup, or those kind of innovations you'll bring to wherever you choose to work. So that is essential. The other major education has to be done with the students' parents, okay? Because there's a very important element of parachuting, okay? Parachuting, you know the concepts, they're watching, and we call them the helicopter parents, you know, they're hovering, and the more modern term is the stealth parents. They're still doing it, but you can't see them, okay? So that education is also very important to start with. I believe that some pilots in Korea will be very important, and I will be quiet after this one. So you have the deepest knowledge. You receive absolutely top-class education. Wherever you go to any of the Korean universities, they are wonderful universities. So what's missing here? If anything is missing, you have a tremendous level of competence in your area of study. The missing piece is your confidence in yourself, that I will make it happen. I have all the ingredients, and who cares if I fail? If I fail, I'll get up and make it work. The founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, he failed 6 times before he founded Twitter. Okay? Didn't stop, got up, what did go wrong? Okay, I'm gonna move on, because he had the confidence. So your confidence, the best way to establish this, again, your exposure to the world outside the university, and I can't think of a better way than this cooperative education model.
Okay, thank you very much. Very impressive speech. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, yeah, Professor Wen. Yeah, Professor Wen. Yeah.
Right, yeah. We also did a survey among our business students, right? And we asked them how many of them would like to become an entrepreneur. And this survey was done with strong university support. And we were very shocked to find out the result. I said from a business school, we have less than 3% of our students wanting to become entrepreneurs. It was shocking, right? You know. But then when we look at the facts, then we realize that actually we shouldn't be too much of a shock, because we're basically victims of our own success. We basically in a business course produce accounting students and business students. Until about 5 years back, we were the only school that produces only qualified accountants for the whole of Singapore. Nobody else does that. Today, NUS do it, SMU do it, but they produce only about maybe between 100 to 300 students. We produce about 600 to 800 students. Now, when we analyze the result, why? We found that more than 50% of our graduates will ultimately be taken by the big 4 accounting firms. All right? So imagine you are taking an accountancy degree. Even before you graduate, the big 4 firms come and interview you, and all 4 firms offer you a job. You will not think about entrepreneurship, right? You'll be perfect. Your parents will be very happy. You know, you get a good job with the big 4 and you become a partner, no worries. And then the other balance of the student will be taken by our banks, our government statutory board. Singapore government is very smart. They always look for the best kids to recruit them and giving them very good scholarship. That's why I always tell my friends, all over the world you may try to, cheat the income tax if you want to, but never in Singapore because they're smarter than you. We always take the best first-class honor students to go inside there and cover all the loopholes. So what is left? Then we have about 10 to 20% students who are on scholarship. And on the scholarship, automatically the job is waiting for them, and they go back. So for 3% to think about entrepreneurship, I told the researcher, I think the figure is too high. He was shocked. I said, they really make you happy, right? But I think it's even less than 3%. But from the engineering side, we have about 10% who indicated that, yes, they would like to do entrepreneurship. Now, okay, to answer Professor Koh's question, right? What happened is we started this entrepreneurship basically because of this. Let me share with you this very interesting story, right? We were meeting together when we talked about the firm. And of course, we are getting funding from our Economic Development Board. So we're going to prepare a paper for them and to justify, because we're going to get $10 million from them to start up this center. And the Economic Development Board chief who attended the presentation is typically a 100% government servant, just like your Korean civil service, very strict, very bureaucratic, and to the rules. After listening to my presentation, he asked me this question. So we give you $10 million for 5 years. How many entrepreneurs can you produce? So my answer was, what do you think will be my answer? How many entrepreneurs can you produce? You can be pessimistic. As this morning session, one of the professors said, I'm very pessimistic. Or you can be very optimistic. What is the figure? Give me. What do you think is a rough figure? Anyone? 3, 5, 10, 20? Okay, I take in 50 in a class. Very hard, right? So I told the director, I said, the number of entrepreneurs I can produce range from 0 to 50 and more. He looked at me. He said, Prof. Wan, you're an accountant. Obviously, you don't know your sums, isn't it, right? I said, yeah, I'm talking about that. I may have 0. I may get more than 50 because these people, through the enthusiasm, through the passion, can pull in people who are not in my class and form a team, all right? Okay. So he kept quiet. Next one, he asked me, as what Professor Koh said, why do you call this technopreneurship? I'm confused. What is technopreneurship? There's no such word as technopreneurship. I went to Google. I can't find anything. But today when you Google, you find a lot of definition, right? Because people generally have accepted this term over the last 10 years. So I have to explain to them. So I said, okay, in Singapore, maybe not so much in Korea, we are very traditional. Typical Chinese family like us who brought up, we go to the coffee shop to drink coffee, remember? You have this coffee shop seller who will wear his pajamas, long pants with his singlet, and he will make his coffee, you know, and then serve it to you, right? Of course, when he makes the coffee, every time you drink a coffee, the taste may vary a bit because sometimes you put too much powder, sometimes less powder, right? So I said, that is entrepreneurship. You open up a coffee shop, you just serve coffee. You know, every time people come to you, you serve different type of coffee, or maybe different grades, different standard because it's not consistent. You go to Starbucks. What do Starbucks tell you? Everything is all programmed. They use their pride is in the machine. When they produce the coffee for you, it is perfect to the taste, and you are very, you know, you feel very quite excited when you see them brewing the coffee. You know, the way they flush the coffee and everything. I was like, that is technology, right? And then I said, that is what I mean by technopreneurship. Okay, so the meeting ended, we went back. So I wasn't very hopeful that I would get the money from him. But the next day, telephone call came, president told me, very happy, yes, you get the whole 10 million for the 5 years. I was stunned, you know, because I thought, you're going to maybe slash down to $1 million for me just to play around, right? Okay, now, when we started this entrepreneurship program, in undergraduate, we gave a minor. Minor means, you see, usually for a whole program, it takes over 3 years, we cram to 3 years. You do about 8 subjects per year, so you have to do about 24 subjects. Each subject is about 3 academic units. That means you have to do about 72 academic units minimum to graduate. So for this minor entrepreneurship, they need to do 4 subjects, which is 12 academic units. But we give them a choice of 6 subjects to choose from. Reason we give them a choice of 6 is because some of the subjects, the accounting and business students may have done it, but the engineers may not have done it. So they can opt for those basic subjects, like for example, accounting and basic marketing. In accounting and business students, we cover those. But engineering students don't cover that. So that may be more important for them. So we give them a choice to take. So we have like marketing strategy, business plan, actually how to draft a business plan, how to come up with your cash flow projection, because you've got to sell your idea to the VCs, all right, or even to other investors. And ultimately, when you want to launch an IPO, you've got to prepare all these documents, and you must understand that. And we also teach them, basically give them a choice of it, finance, mergers, acquisition, and venture development. So they can pick the subjects that they like. And even if they don't intend to come out with their own businesses, they can still pick the subject that they like to help them propel themselves to the other organizations. So we give them a choice onto that. But for the master's program, okay, the basic course are there. As I showed you along the venture creation cycle, we teach those subjects, and we give them about 2 or 3 other electives to broaden their base, but the most comes from the visits to industry, exchange program, visits to Silicon Valley. Now we're arranging them even to go to Stanford, spend about 1 or 2 weeks for the immersion. And basically that's how we tie them up, because our emphasis is always to give them that broad-based exposure.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And we have less than 10 minutes left. So right now, I want to just open up to the audience. So if you have any question, would you please raise your hand? Okay. Yeah, first, okay.
Good afternoon. I am a student of Chung University, business major, and it was such an honor to hear these wonderful speeches. And I have a question to Professor Hamdullahpur, that to develop and improve creativity, I think it is important to make an effort in daily life. How can we keep training ourselves?
How much time do you have? I think, as I mentioned, everybody has that creativity in them. And it's a matter of how would you allow yourself to be creative. There are 2 ways. I go to our dormitories, residences, and I see some students there, it's late in the evening, they're still studying. I said, what have you done today? I've been studying. What else? I've been studying. I said, get out. okay? You have to expose yourself to the world side. So you can go as deep as you like in your studies. At one point, you have to optimize it. So, well, now I need to broaden my horizons, okay? So allow yourself to be artistic. Let your, artistic side come. Involve in reading literature. Go to a museum. Enjoy an art piece. Listen to music. And I'm probably exaggerating, but I do mean it, because if you go one-dimensional, you will stay one-dimensional. Whether you can learn a lot of things nowadays. We have this wonderful environment now. The information is accessible and available anytime you want it. You can do it yourself, but allow yourself to really understand the world around you and link whatever your passion is with that, with what's going on. And so your creativity is something, yes, you have it. Allow yourself to develop it in whichever way you can. And there's not just one pathway, there are many.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk to same words to my son, okay? Okay, you? Yeah. Yeah, your question. Yeah. Oh, lady, yeah.
I also have a question for President of University Waterloo, and I'm impressed by your saying that intellectual property if I make intellectual property, it is 100% of mine. So here is my question. What kind of policies or institutions do you have to systematically guarantee the students' intellectual property? Or could you give me some specific example about this?
Okay. I'll reiterate, intellectual property policy applies across the board, whether you're a professor or a student, or a graduate student, undergraduate student. You come up with your IP, we will make sure that it's protected, okay, through disclosures or whatever you want. If it needs to be patented, there's cost involved, and we talk then differently how to shoulder that cost, but nevertheless, it's your intellectual property. So if you say that, okay, I am so happy, I have my intellectual property, it is mine, I'm not sharing it with anybody, I'm gonna go home, put it under my pillow, and just sleep on it, okay? No, you have that intellectual property. We will encourage you now what to do with that. There are various ways, as I tried to explain, that you can start incubating. There will be people around you who will guide you through this, either through the legal, way or a business pathway, so that you will understand one day how you will take this, mobilize that intellectual property into something that I will benefit as a citizen. It will improve the quality of my life, or it will create more businesses. Your intellectual property. One way, the best way to do this, and if you will allow me just 2 minutes, let me share this with you. Just 2 months ago, I went to one of our Velocity garages, and groups of students working there, they're graduated. This student came to me and said, "Sir, do you remember me?" I said, "I should, but I don't." He said, "I just graduated last June, and you shook my hand and gave me my degree." I said, "Yeah, there were 5,000 others, but I nevertheless." He said, No. You asked me what I was going to do after graduation. And I told you that I'm just starting my own business. You were very excited. You grabbed me by my both arms and said, "I'm so proud of you. Let me know how you're doing." This is my moment. I graduated in June. This is September. I just hired my 10th employee. Okay? So this is the kind of encouragement that we provide to our students, from technical, legal, business advice to hugging them and saying good luck to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we have 3 more minutes. Okay, so 2 more questions, okay? The lady, I'm sorry, because most of Korean students or Koreans, so would you? The lady, yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I just have a question about financial aspects, because it's nice to have ideas when we are young, but we need money to create a setup. So how can we, who can we solicit to help us, to support us, and or how can we spare money before? Do we have to get a job before to create a company 5 years after graduating, or what are your advices?
Good question. We do have a startup fund. It started first with a $1 million donation from one of the student entrepreneurs, and then it's grown into a sizable fund. So each one of these startup companies get initially $30,000, so they could, go take a shower and have a have a meal, and then they're exposed to all kinds of angels and VCs and investors. Okay, and if their ideas, if their creation is something that is really going somewhere, there's no lack of investors or promoters to do this. But there is this, there are all kinds of things called the valley of death, whatever, then you can find that as an investment. How do they sustain themselves? The university has created this fund. We don't rely on government. We don't rely on our own things. We basically rely on people who went through the same pathway themselves, became very successful, and they come back and make significant donations. So that is the difference between taxing them for their intellectual property or say, it's yours, go make it happen. When this happens, they come back and put significant donations back into the university.
Okay, because just one last question to Professor Wayne. Okay, is there anybody who asked Professor Wayne? Professor Wayne. Okay, the lady. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Hello and good evening. I have a question for Professor Joseph Wen.
Okay.
I'm from Malaysia, currently doing my mechanical engineering in Ilho University, my final year. I'm quite interested in entrepreneurship, but I'm doing my degree here 4 years, but I cannot see, in my engineering, I cannot see any entrepreneurship elements while I'm studying here. So what did you suggest for a student like me to get involved in the entrepreneurship? Because I don't really have any background on that, but I'm really interested on it. Thank you.
Very good. First of all, congratulations, you're in the right faculty. Definitely, engineering is really the core backbone and the base. Now, usually if you're interested, what you could do is actually there are two ways. If you have supportive parents, you go back and tell your parents that you like to be an entrepreneur. Would they support you, right? If you're in Waterloo, you can tap onto the fund, right? But back in Malaysia, you may not have the fund, or you may have the fund from elsewhere. Now, I give a personal example. My second son, all right, because he studied in NTU, and he knew about program, so he told me, he said, Dad, I want to be an entrepreneur. Would you support me? Also, partly to answer the other lady's question, right? I said, how do you want me to support you? He said, it's very simple. Don't run after me. Don't hassle me. I am okay, I can get by myself, but you continue to let me stay in your house and you continue to feed me, I'm okay. Oh, that is very simple. I said, sure, go ahead. He was very happy. But when my wife knew about that, oh gosh, my ears were ringing the whole night. My wife told me, how could you do that to your son? Because typically, Asian wife want the son come out with a good university, good degree, get a good job, get a good pay, and you follow 9 to 5. We have this idea of working hard, never mind, can work 12 hours a day. That's why I always joke, we say in Singapore, we have very perfectly work-life balance. You work 12 hours, you have the other 12 hours off work, Nobody works 12 hours, right? But we do that. Now, anyway, the other possibility is this, because entrepreneurship is not like almost immediately. If you have that interest, when you graduate out, you can go back and you start work, right? In fact, we have one Malaysian girl doing this now. She enrolled in our part-time program, which we have classes on Saturday. Every Friday, she take the night bus from Kuala Lumpur into Singapore, stay the whole of Saturday to finish all the classes, stay on in Sunday to want to talk to us to get the work done, and then she will travel back on Sunday, all right, for her work. And then she told us, by the time she finished, and she put very nicely, it doesn't matter even I don't graduate, I don't complete the course, but the moment I go through the course and I learn enough, he said, I'm going to go out very resolutely to do on my own. So I asked her, do you have support? She said, yes. She said, my parents supported me, and that's very important. And she believed that in Malaysia, actually, there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs. In '84, I was the first consultant to the Malaysian government on privatization of the Kereta Tanah Melayu, the KTM. And we brought the railway up to what it is today. It's all changing the mindset, you know. And today you can see with the collaboration between Malaysia and Singapore, right? You know, the development of the Marina Bay. All this started basically because of the entrepreneurial mindset. And it takes some time, but always remember, if you have that passion, you can get it there, you know. You just don't be a bit impatient, you know. You look at circumstances. If you have to work first, you work first. You know, maybe save enough to last you at least 6 months. Then you can easily become an entrepreneur if you have 6 months of your savings to stand by, you know. I think within 6 months, you can find out whether you should stay or whether you should go back for a job. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think it's time to wrap up this session. And I would like to thank you, Professor Hamdullahpur, also Professor Josephine, also meaningful discussion, very beneficial discussion by the Professor Ilho Kim and Hyukjin Ko. And also thank you very much for wonderful audience. Okay, I will end this session. Thank you very much.
네, 수고해주신 김진수 중앙대 경영학부 교수님과 소중한 강연을 해주신 발표자, 토론자분들께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀드립니다.